The predominant impact of COVID-19 on Nigerians has been in those severe economic outcomes, where it is deepening extreme poverty and enlarging the population of people living this way. For these millions, the pandemic is causing incomes to ebb sharply to critically low levels for many, while simultaneously causing costs of living to rise steeply. And with almost no opportunities for meaningful relief in sight, this unsustainable state of things is only becoming worse. The combined effect of reduced local economic activity, diminished export commodity demand, rising national debts and shrunken fiscal capacity that COVID-19 prompted, contracted Nigeria's economy, producing sizable job and income losses and driving up poverty numbers. Inflation in the country has risen steadily because of the coronavirus, up to a punishing 13.22%, and unemployment now stands at an all-time high of 27.1%. Prior to the pandemic, more than 82 million citizens already lived on less than $1.90 a day, most of whom work in the informal sector that houses over 80% of the country's labor force. The people who function within this unregulated space, the petty traders, the artisans, the farmers, are the ones whose livelihoods are most susceptible to economic shocks such as COVID-19 has been. These Nigerians mostly earn their slim wages daily and typically exhaust these wages in the same day. Theirs is such a precarious financial position that even the smallest reduction to these incomes could seriously threaten their survival. What the coronavirus has done in substantially narrowing their earnings and their ability to earn is push millions of these people beyond that survival threshold and into a place of very dangerous financial uncertainty. Through the same income reduction effect, the pandemic has also caused millions more people who were previously not extremely poor, such as the small business owners who have lost those businesses, and professionals such as teachers who lost their jobs during the lockdowns, to live in a similar manner today on less than $1.90 a day. In June, after the government first eased the lockdowns, I ventured out into the federal capital, Abuja, to meet with the people most affected by the coronavirus pandemic, so that through conversations with them, I could gain a proper understanding of their situations beyond the statistics. I spoke to every type of informal sector worker, and to formal sector ones as well, whose incomes had suffered. I spoke to men and women of different ages in urban, peri-urban and rural areas, in order for my learnings to be all-encompassing and balanced. What I found troubled me. Even though I had set out with the expectation of encountering people in hardship, the extent and starkness of that hardship and the general sense of despondency and frustration were most startling. I discovered that things had become so bleak that for many, basic needs such as education for their children were now exorbitant expenses to be set aside, and the concern of putting the next meal on the table was what now consumed them entirely. A particularly worry-inducing group among those that I met was the one of internally displaced persons. There are over 2.9 million IDPs all over the country, living in the many shoddy settlements that they fled to from the violent insurgency in their home states in the northeast of the country. These mostly uneducated rural farmers had heretofore been hard-pressed to find placements within the relatively sophisticated and saturated labor forces of their new, mostly urban environments. Now, with the coronavirus pandemic, their already extremely vulnerable livelihoods are in double jeopardy. For many Nigerians, living conditions were already harsh pre-pandemic, with millions of poor living on the brink. The pandemic has shoved them forcibly over the edge, and not much is certain anymore. The current situation, where the country's population of young people is massive, and the prevalent one by a wide margin, where there is abject and growing poverty all over, and where there is little hope for positive change, is an accident waiting to happen. The recent events of civil protest, unrest, and looting of palliative stockpiles across the country are only some of the possible, inevitable, disruptive outcomes of a larger, unmitigated underlying problem. There has been a pandemic afflicting millions of Nigerians all along. The poverty pandemic. The Covid-19 pandemic has only reinforced it in such a manner that it would be detrimental to everyone if it were overlooked any longer.